My name is Clara. I'm 41, and I teach business administration at a university in Denver. I've been married to Lucas for 17 years. From the outside, we looked flawless. Steady careers, a neat suburban home, vacations every summer. But beneath that polished surface, cracks had been spreading for years. I simply chose not to notice. That evening, Lucas was in the shower. Water streamed in the background when his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I never checked his messages. I believed in protecting trust. But instinct, sharp and insistent, pulled me to the screen. A single notification appeared. Table for two confirmed at Lumiere, Friday 7:30 p.m. Window seat as requested. She'll love it. I froze. Lumiere wasn't just any restaurant. It was one of Denver's most exclusive. Years ago, Lucas and I had dreamed of dining there for our 10th anniversary, but a work trip canceled those plans. I had never been, and now he was arranging the evening we once imagined for someone else. I hadn't intended to unlock his phone, yet my fingers moved before I could stop them. The passcode was still our wedding date. Just 4 digits, as simple as the vows I once believed would last. What opened wasn't a screen. It was another life. Messages, photos, entire conversations stretching back nearly a year. Her name was Sophie, a blonde from his law firm's communications department. They texted constantly. Morning greetings, little compliments, nightly check-ins. Photos, too. The two of them wrapped around each other on a Santa Fe business trip, Lucas grinning wider than I'd seen in years. The sight punched the air from my lungs. I heard only a sharp ringing, metallic and endless, in my ears. Part of me wanted to fling the phone across the room, to scream until the walls shook. Instead, I stood stiff, my knuckles white. From the bathroom, Lucas called casually, "Have you seen my blue tie?" As if nothing had changed. As if he hadn't. Just burned our marriage to ash. I slid the phone back exactly as I'd found it. My voice was flat, controlled. Second drawer. That night, I lay beside him, my body rigid, listening to his steady breathing. For months, I had blamed his distance on stress. I had explained away his late nights, his evasive eyes, the trace of perfume that didn't belong to me. Now, the truth was undeniable. I had never been paranoid. I had been right all along. The next morning, I kissed him goodbye as usual. "Good luck with the Japanese clients," I murmured, while knowing about the candlelit dinner he'd planned for Sophie. As soon as the door shut, I called the university and requested 3 days off. Not to collapse. To prepare. I had spent 17 years being the good wife. That version of me was gone. In her place was something sharper, calmer, unshakably clear. I didn't want screaming matches or shattered dishes. I wanted precision. If Lucas thought he was giving Sophie a night to remember, he was right, just not in the way he intended. His calendar was meticulous. The Friday reservation spelled out everything. 7:30, window table, lighting adjusted, wine pre-ordered. Perfection. Except for the fact he wasn't planning it for his wife. I looked up Sophie in the firm directory. Sophie Walker, Internal Communications. A quick search revealed her husband, Ethan Walker, an architect in Denver. Warm smile, honest eyes. A man who deserved the truth. Of course, I couldn't simply call him and drop the bomb. I needed subtlety. As a lecturer, I had an advantage: invitations for guest speakers. So, I drafted an email. "Dear Mr. Ethan Walker, my name is Clara Whitmore. I teach project management at Metro Denver University. We're hosting a seminar on sustainable urban design and admired your recent work on the Rivergate project. Would you be open to discussing a guest lecture over dinner this Friday, 7:30 p.m. at Lumiere? It would be an honor to meet you." I sent it. Within 2 hours, Ethan replied, "Thank you, Ms. Whitmore. I'd be glad to. Friday at 7:30 works perfectly. I look forward to it." I read that line again and again, heart pounding, not from fear but from anticipation. Next, the reservation. I called Lumiere. "Good evening," the hostess said. "Do you have a preference for Friday night?" "Yes. A window seat for two. And if possible near the reservation under Hamilton and Rothman. We're potential partners." A half-truth. Enough to secure my place. "Of course, ma'am," she said. "We'll seat you close by." Everything was ready. Not rage, not theatrics. A reveal. Precise, devastating, undeniable. Friday arrived. I wore a teal silk dress Lucas once dismissed as too loud. My hair in a bun, champagne heels untouched until now. I wasn't dressing for beauty. I was dressing for war. And tonight's battlefield was a five-star restaurant, lit by candlelight, softened by violin, polished with crystal and silver. I reached 20 minutes early, ordered a martini and kept my eyes fixed on the entrance. My chest tightened. This wasn't nerves but resolution. "Clara Whitmore?" A voice interrupted. "Ethan Walker." Tall, dressed sharply, polite but weary. He shook my hand warmly. We sat, exchanged pleasantries, even discussed urban planning. But my gaze kept flicking toward the door. And then they arrived. Lucas in the gray blazer I had once gifted him. Sophie in a red dress that clung to her like a spotlight. They laughed as if the world were theirs alone. Lucas pulled out her chair, poured her wine, brushed her wrist. I sipped my drink, steady. Ethan, kind as he was, hadn't noticed the storm building across the room. When I turned for my napkin, my eyes met Lucas's. His smile vanished. His glass nearly slipped, saved only by the waiter. Sophie followed his stare. Recognition hit her face. I leaned toward Ethan and said calmly, "Excuse me just a moment." Then I rose and walked toward the restroom corridor, my steps rehearsed in my head. No slaps, no broken glasses. Just truth, plain and sharp. Halfway there, Sophie appeared in front of me. Her face pale, her eyes wide. She whispered, barely audible, "You're Clara, aren't you?" I gave a faint nod. "And you're the one clasping my husband's hand beneath the table, while your own husband sits barely 10 steps away." Her complexion drained. Her lips trembled. "Please, not here." "Why not?" I tilted my head, my voice steady. "Isn't this the perfect stage? Candlelight, wine, soft music, everything arranged for a flawless little performance." "I don't," she faltered. "I'm not interested in excuses," I cut in. "But Ethan deserves the truth, doesn't he?" I glanced toward my table where Ethan was scanning the room, concern etched into his features. He should know exactly who his wife is sharing dinner with. Sophie twisted as though to flee, but Lucas appeared behind her, face ashen. "Clara, what are you doing here?" I held his gaze, then called across the room, "Ethan, could you join us for a moment?" Ethan strode over, eyes narrowed. "What's happening?" I looked straight at him. "Ethan, this is my husband, Lucas. And of course, you recognize Sophie, your wife." For an instant, the entire restaurant froze. Breathless silence. Sophie covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Lucas stumbled backward. Ethan turned to Sophie, his face lined with betrayal. I rose, my head high, and started for the door. "Oh, and don't worry," I added calmly. "Dinner is still on Lucas. His company card seems awfully familiar to her." I left them behind. Glasses, untouched. Apologies unspoken. Two lovers choking on a truth they could no longer deny. When I returned to my table, Ethan remained standing, staring at Sophie as she shook in Lucas's arms. Both looked hollow, like dreamers jolted awake into a nightmare. I caught the waiter's eye. "Please," I said, voice gentle but firm, "arrange a private room." Merge our table with Mr. Lucas Hamilton's. We have matters to clear up. The waiter hesitated, then nodded. At once, ma'am. Within minutes, we were seated in a discreet chamber, soft lighting, a table set for 4. Ethan settled beside me. Across from us, Lucas and Sophie sat rigid, like students caught red-handed in an exam. Silence pressed the air. No clatter of silverware, no scraping of chairs, only distant music and the weight of our breathing. Lucas broke first. "Clara, I don't even know where to begin." "3 days ago," I answered, pouring water into my glass. "When you received the reservation confirmation. I saw it on your screen. That's when I knew." They froze. Sophie lowered her eyes. Lucas opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "Don't bother with a speech. I read everything, every message, every photo, every secret trip to Santa Fe. Don't imagine what it was like. I remember exactly." "I'm sorry," Sophie whispered. I turned to Ethan. "He's my husband and she's your wife. The very least we deserve is the truth, spoken to our faces." Ethan stared at Sophie, his voice tight. "What are you planning? To tell me? That it was a mistake? That you were searching for yourself? Because it looks to me like you found plenty in another woman's husband," Sophie wept. "I never meant it to go this far. It began as a joke. I felt invisible at home. Lucas..." He listened. "I listened too," Ethan snapped, voice trembling. "I spent entire weekends redesigning your office, trying to build the creative space you dreamed of. And I believed it mattered." Lucas turned to me, voice shaking. "Clara, I ruined everything. But please, don't let this be the end." I smiled. Not kindly, but with the hard calm of someone who had endured the storm. "Lucas, the end didn't arrive tonight. It began the day you looked at Sophie the way you once looked at me. That's when vows stopped being promises and became empty words." He dropped his head. Sophie turned away, tears streaming. I reached into my purse, set a hotel key on the table. "I'll be at the Celeste across the street. Already booked. You're welcome to go home if you have the nerve. I'll return Monday morning. You'd better not be there." "Clara, please, don't do this," Lucas begged. "I'll do anything." "You can't repair a house rotting at its foundation." My voice was ice. I used to forgive endlessly. But forgiveness, sometimes, is betrayal of yourself. I stood, smoothing my dress. To Ethan, I said quietly, "I'm sorry you had to learn this way." He nodded, voice raw. "Thank you for showing me. It hurts. But I needed to know." I glanced once more at Lucas and Sophie. "I wish you both luck, not because I forgive you, but because every choice demands payment, sooner or later." Then I walked out of Lumiere. My heels cracked sharply against the stone, echoing in the still air. In my hand, a clutch held the key to room 1203 at the Celeste Hotel, a suite that overlooked a city still glittering, even when the heart had gone dark. At the front desk, I accepted the card key with a silent nod. Inside the suite, I locked the door, kicked off my heels, and stood by the window. Amber city lights reflected against the glass, painting my shadow on the floor. For the first time in years, I saw myself clearly. Without Lucas, without excuses, without disguise. I sat on the bed and cried. Not cinematic sobbing, not delicate tears, raw, ragged, unstoppable. I cried for 17 years of youth spent waiting by the door, for lies wrapped in flowers, for nights I thought were love, but were only rehearsals for betrayal. I don't know how long I wept, only that when a knock came, I was still clutching a pillow, eyes burning. I peered through the peephole. "Ethan." I opened the door a crack. He stood there in a long coat, hair tousled, exhaustion carved into his face. "Sorry to intrude," he murmured. "I didn't know where else to go." "Come in." We sat in armchairs by the window. Cars streamed by outside as if nothing had shattered tonight. After a long silence, Ethan sighed. I still don't understand how you knew everything, and still managed to sit through dinner. I gave a small laugh. I didn't sit still. I waited. Some truths, if you let others speak them, lose their weight. He nodded. Thank you for not letting me live in a lie. We spoke like strangers carrying the same wound. He told me Sophie had been the first to believe in his wild designs. He thought she truly understood him. I told him Lucas had once placed a ring on my finger in the rain, vowing never to lose his way. Both promises turned out hollow. I think I'm filing for divorce, I said, voice flat. Ethan didn't flinch. I don't think I can stay with someone who can pretend that well either. I met his gaze. I'm not angry anymore, not like before. Anger fades. But I will never again stay in a relationship that strips me of my self-respect. And you're the one clasping my husband's hand beneath the table while your own husband. He studied me. You're stronger than I thought. No, I said softly. I'm just the last one willing to face the truth. That night Ethan booked another room. Before leaving, he paused in the doorway. If you need a friend through this, I'm here. Thank you, Ethan. Tonight, you understood me more than my husband did in 17 years. I watched him walk down the corridor. I didn't feel strong, but I felt lighter, like I'd set down a suitcase of stones I'd dragged for too long. Lucas could beg, could promise, could fill my inbox with apologies. None of it mattered. My heart had closed the moment I saw him. Look at Sophie the way he once looked at me. The next morning, fog still blanketed the city when I left the hotel. I returned to the house we had shared for nearly 2 decades, not to cling, but to clear away the remnants of a marriage that had ended long before. Lucas sat waiting in the living room, hair disheveled, shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. He leapt up as I entered. "Clara, we need to talk." His voice was raw, as if rehearsed all night. I placed my purse on the table. "Then talk. I know I betrayed you. There's no excuse. But we can fight for this. Counseling. I'll cut off Sophie." "I already told her," I interrupted. "She's gone." He froze. "What?" one of her colleagues told me. "Sophie quit her job and left for Santa Barbara this morning. Couldn't face the fallout." He collapsed onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. "You told everyone." "Not out of vengeance," I said evenly, "but because I refused to keep living in the dark. I reached out to your mother, to Mark, to Jenna, and even to your college friends, the very people you were always desperate to impress. I told them the truth, that for almost a year you betrayed me, that you disguised affairs as late-night meetings, buried lies inside work emails, and shared kisses with another woman while I stood in the kitchen making dinner, waiting for you to walk through the door." Lucas shook his head, panic flashing in his eyes. "You've ruined me. Do you have any idea what this will do to my company? To my reputation? What my friends will say?" I gave a sharp, humorless laugh. "Your reputation means more to you than your marriage? Don't blame me, Lucas. I didn't destroy you. You did. I just stopped covering for the mask you wore." He stepped closer, trying to grab my hand. "Clara, please, don't do this. I love you. I really do." I pulled back. "Love doesn't survive in shadows. If you truly loved me, you wouldn't have whispered 'baby' to another woman while holding me in your arms at night." He crumbled to the floor, shoulders trembling. "She meant nothing. It was just a mistake." "No," I said firmly. "It was choice after choice. Every text you sent her, every reservation you booked, every lie you carried on your lips. You had a chance to stop, but you didn't. And now neither will I." His voice broke. "If you walk away, you'll destroy my life." "No," I whispered, locking my eyes on his. "I'll be saving mine." The following week, Lucas tried everything. Calls, texts, flowers at my office, even a 4-page email about his clarity after that dinner. I ignored it all. I'd listened to enough apologies to last a lifetime. Silence spoke louder. So I hired a lawyer and filed for divorce. 3 weeks later, a close friend saw Lucas with Sophie at a cafe on the outskirts of town. They no longer looked radiant, only worn. 2 days later, I received his last message. I tried to move on with her, but there's nothing left. She doesn't smile at me anymore. I don't see you in her eyes. I didn't respond. Days after, his social media disappeared, and word spread that he'd stepped down from the board for personal reasons. A man who once lived only for appearances was finally forced to face himself. Spring arrived early that year. One Saturday morning, sunlight streamed into my new apartment, spilling across the wooden floor while I made coffee. My phone rang. It was Ethan. "Coffee at Tanner's?" he asked. I checked the clock, 9:12. "Give me 15 minutes, I replied with a smile. Since that night at Lumiere, Ethan and I, once strangers, now survivors of the same wreck, had kept in touch. First, daily check-ins, then weekend meetups. No pressure, no labels. Just two broken people learning to breathe again. That morning, he was already waiting at our usual table, notebook open, 2 lattes ordered. "I guessed right, didn't I?" he said, sliding one toward me. I laughed. "You always do. Funny. Lucas, never got my coffee order right in 17 years. We both laughed, not the bitter laughter of before, but something lighter. "How are you?" I asked. "Divorce was finalized last week," Ethan admitted, nodding as if to convince himself. "Sophie left me a note. Just a sentence. 'I'm sorry for making you lose faith in love.'" "And did you?" I asked gently. He thought for a moment. "No, because I'm learning to believe again, not in promises, but in small, consistent actions." His words quieted me. We didn't need to say more. That silence held something, an unspoken truth that we were walking the same path. Months passed peacefully. I returned to teaching, signed up for a weekend photography class, and finally lived without being defined as someone's wife. Ethan, beyond running his firm, began guest speaking at my student seminars. He never missed one. Each time I saw him at the front of that classroom, passion in his voice, I felt alive again. One evening, after a seminar, I invited him over. My apartment was small but filled with plants and light. We ate pizza on the balcony, watching the city glow. "Do you think we've changed?" I asked, tucking a blanket around me. He turned, steady. "Not changed. We're just returning to who we've always been." His answer touched me in a way I didn't expect. Later, on a summer night by the river after an outdoor concert, Ethan stopped. "Clara," he said softly, "I'm not rushing you. I don't want to push. But if one day you want to try again, not marriage, not grand promises, just a relationship built on trust and honesty, I'll be ready." I met his eyes. They held no demand, only patience. "I'm not ready to love again the old way," I said slowly. "But if it's the way you describe, friendship, openness, no masks, then maybe I've already started." He didn't speak. He just took my hand gently, without urgency. That simple touch wasn't a vow, but it told me he was ready to help. Write my next chapter. Under soft lights and a summer breeze, I knew I was stepping into something imperfect but real. This time, I wouldn't trade away my worth for love. And maybe that's why it would last, because we both knew what it was like to shatter. A year after Lumiere, I was invited to Professor Martha Benson's retirement. She had been my PhD advisor, a woman I deeply respected. The event was at Hotel L'Array, elegant and serene, just like her. I wore a navy dress, my mother's pearl earrings, and carried a carefully wrapped book she'd once admired. I expected nothing more than polite conversations and nostalgia. But then, near the wine table, I saw him. Lucas. He was thinner, streaks of gray at his temples, polished but stripped of the arrogance he once wore. When his eyes met mine, both of us froze. He walked over, voice rough. "Clara, I didn't think I'd see you here." "Nor I you," I replied evenly. He gave a faint smile. "Professor Benson is the only one who still speaks to me." "She always sees the best in people," I said. Lucas sighed, lowering his gaze. "I owe you an apology. A real one. Not because you need it, but because I need to say it. After everything, I lost more than my reputation. I lost myself. Sophie and well, it fell apart faster than what I ruined with you." I looked at him without anger, only detachment. "I hope you find peace." "And you? Are you truly okay?" he asked softly. "Yes," I answered without hesitation. "I'm building my life on my own terms. And I'm not alone anymore." At that moment Ethan entered, wearing a simple blazer. His smile, warm, steady, felt like the light at the end of a long tunnel. Lucas followed my gaze and nodded in. "Understanding? He's a good man," he said. "You deserve this." I placed a hand over my heart. "Thank you. And so do you. Just start when you're ready, not when you're running from your past." That night, Ethan and I sat side by side, talking, dancing under golden lights, laughing with friends. No grand declarations, just presence, just healings. We walked out, hand in hand beneath the stars. I whispered, "There was a time I thought betrayal was the end." Ethan squeezed my hand gently. "It wasn't the end. Just a pause. So you could find a better beginning." And we walked forward, without looking back, because the past had closed. The present held trust, and the future was quietly unfolding, one steady step at a time. I was no longer the woman who sacrificed everything for a husband who broke her. I was Clara, whole, free, and strong. Betrayal had once shattered me, but it also led me here, to a life built on respect, honesty, and the courage to choose myself first. And you're the one clasping my husband's hand beneath the table. While your own husband,